So we are at the round room for the preferred fiber face-off. We're going to be talking about preferred materials and next-gen materials. You know, I think we heard a little bit this morning in the opening session of where have we been in the last 15 years, what have we achieved? And there's this need, we want to stop talking and we want to start seeing more action. I think we all feel that way. And we know that next-gen and preferred materials are an integral part of how we're going to achieve our objectives, our impact objectives for decarbonization, everything that the brands have set, what regulation is going to be requiring us to do. So what we want to do in this session is really get into some ways to get to the next level. We're talking about next level barriers in this conference, and how can we break down some of those barriers around next gen and preferred materials with price, premiums, or with performance and technical requirements or implementation. So I think I'm really excited because we just have this amazing group of panelists who are going to be able to address things from all different directions. So they're going to be times during the session where we're going to allow for Q&A. So start thinking about what questions you might want to ask. We'll have 2 questions in the middle and then a couple more at the end. So we're going to dive in. And to get started, we're just going to do a quick round of intros. If all of you could just say a line or two about yourself, what you're doing. And as a little icebreaker, we're also going back 15 years to say, what were you doing 15 years ago, as this is the 15-year anniversary of the summit. Nicole, would you like to start?
Ooh, okay, in the hot seat straight away. Well, I'm Nicole Rycroft. I'm the founder and executive director of Canopy. We're a solutions-driven NGO. We work to transform supply chains that are currently driving deforestation and forest degradation, and to really scale and accelerate the transition to more circular next-gen alternatives. So I'm a professional tree hugger. 15 years ago, I had less gray hair than I do now. But was not working in the apparel sector at that point. We were working in the publishing industries, the print sectors, and so we started Canopy Style about 10 years ago, which has been focused on transforming the viscose supply chain.
Yeah, can't wait to hear more. It's been incredible, the progress you guys have made.
Been a fun ride.
Okay, over to you, Edwin.
So hi everybody, I'm Edwin. I'm with the Hong Kong Research Institute for Textile and Apparel. We are an applied research center, and we work on a couple of big research domains. Sustainability is one of them. I think the difference is that years ago we were talking a lot about recycling and reuse, and now it's not only that, but it is also about new generations of materials as part of the topic, and also about carbon negative and carbon neutral types of materials. As well as other topics like Industry 4.0 and things that we can do, use our material for social good. Before running the Research Institute about 15 years ago, I managed global supply chains for a lot of multinational brands.
Yeah, great. So perfectly placed to talk about implementation and everything in particular. Great. Over to you, Sophie.
Hi, I'm Sophie Mather. I'm founder and advisor of the Microfibre Consortium. We are a non-profit textile research-led organisation that connects really deep research with the brands and retailers in order that we can prevent as much of the fibres coming out of our clothing as we possibly can, and direct that into new product direction with the brands and retailers. Yeah. So what was I doing 15 years ago? I really enjoyed going back when you asked us this question. Recycled polyester and organic cotton were just starting to come into product ranges. But from a performance-first point of view, I was working in textile innovation, and I was starting to explore biosynthetics actually at the time, but really from that performance lens rather than the fact that we needed renewable resources. Through that, I started working on algae as a feedstock into polyester. So it was really bold, actually. Yeah. And yeah, it got me thinking about how we need to translate that into what we're doing today. Yeah. So thank you for the question.
Thanks. Great. Nemante?
So I'm Nemante Kuragamage. I give leadership to sustainability at MAS Holdings. MAS Holdings is a manufacturer and a product creator for a lot of big brands around the room, hopefully. And we employ 100,000 people across the world. We are headquartered out of Sri Lanka. We have a huge DNA, a journey in terms of environment and social sustainability. About 5 years ago, we felt we want to put a stake in the ground when it comes to product sustainability, converting more of the core to be sustainable. And 15 years ago, interestingly, we first did our purpose-built eco-friendly manufacturing plant. And I was a business manager trying to figure out what product should go in there first. And we were toying with recycled polyester for the first time then, so it was interesting.
Great. And over to you, Anna, from Recover. Yep.
Hi, my name is Anna Rodes. I'm Head of Sustainability at Recover. We produce mechanically recycled fiber at scale. We are based in Bangladesh, Pakistan, Spain, and soon Vietnam. And we try to produce mechanical recycled fiber, but at the lowest environmental impact possible and ensuring social and responsible conditions through our whole supply chain. So 15 years ago, I was graduating at high school, but I can say that Recover was already recycling textile waste because the company has more than 70 years of expertise.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, and just quickly for myself, so I'm Christine and I have my own consulting practice called Sustainable Advisory Services. I previously worked in brands like the Caring Group and Pangaya. And 15 years ago, I was actually at Eden Apparel, which was featured in the highlight video this morning. So working on one of the pioneer ethical fashion brands on trying to create sustainable employment in sub-Saharan Africa by locating our supply chain there. So really, I have to say one thing that I notice is the conversation on the human rights side has fallen back in the last 15 years, which is always something I want to push back forward. But today we'll talk about next gen and preferred materials and start diving into how we can make this scale. So I'm going to start with you, Nicole, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about your work with man-made cellulosics and how, in particular, you guys have done such a really efficient job in making sure that the supply chain is as de-risked as possible. So if you could talk a little bit how you do that work.
Sure. So we approached our work with the fashion sector through the lens of man-made cellulosic textiles, or viscose, the family of man-made cellulosic textiles. Were becoming a really aggressive driver of deforestation and forest degradation. So there are 300 million trees that are cut down every year to make these textiles. Much of that was coming from high carbon, high biodiversity value forests. And so we recognized that to change business as usual, that we needed to be able to incentivize producers back through the value chain to be able to move forward and to set a really clear bar of what needed to be cleared. And so we now work with 550 brands that represent about 1.7 trillion in the sector. All of them have a canopy-style commitment, so that's closed off the kind of market tolerance to high-carbon, high biodiversity value forest fiber in the man-made cellulosic supply chain, so what we call ancient and endangered forest. And it's really set or primed the pump for the need to really rapidly transition over to circular, low-carbon, next-gen solutions. And because there's been that very clear, consistent message from such a broad sector, you know, from Walmart and Target to H&M and Intertex to LVMH and Kering and a lot of others in between, that's meant that the value chain, the viscose producers themselves have responded to that. So 88% of global viscose production, the producers that represent that viscose production, have similar commitments in place. Obviously, there's always a bit of a time lag between making a commitment and actually implementing it. But in last year's Hot Button, which is an annual rating that we do, 54% of global viscose by volume, or 71% of global viscose producers, had green shirts, so are at low risk, and are now producing next gen. But I think, you know, just not sourcing from high risk areas is a pretty low bar to be clearing. And so I think that transition and really accelerating the shift over to more circular and other alternatives that we call more broadly next gen, because there's textile to textile recycling, but you can make man-made cellulosics from anything that's got cellulose in it, from dandelions to industrial food waste. And so it's really about how do we scale and de-risk those next gen textiles. That's really at the core and the focus of our work. And especially as brands are looking to reduce their footprint in virgin poly or virgin cotton, they're increasingly looking at man-made cellulosics. And I think we're in that age where we really need to be conscious that we don't want to be trading in one environmental disaster for another. And so really ensuring that the transition to man-made cellulosics is to next gen, that we replace half of the virgin wood fibre that's currently, forests that are currently being cut down, and any and all new production capacity is textile to textile or based on things that are currently waste is our priority. And so there's a whole de-risking kind of cascade under that around investment and market demand and all those pieces, but I'm sure we'll get into that later.
Hopefully. No, and I have to say, because when I was at Caring, we, of course, were working with Canopy, and it was amazing. One of the things that you guys do so well is you said, okay, we've written up some guidelines of how you should be sourcing your viscose and man-made cellulosics, and gave the same thing to all these brands. And so brands could say, okay, this is exactly what we need. And it was like a ready-made turnkey, okay, this is what we should be doing. We have the guidance. And then as you progress, you also help the brands progress by then inserting into these guidelines the demand for next gen and getting that market signal out there, and how powerful it is to be able to provide that framework that everybody can use and those very specific standards, really, that everybody could look to. Very powerful.
And of course, things evolve. When we first started, it was around eliminating the risk of really high carbon forests from the landscape. And we were, called girly and told that we were crazy about thinking that next gen was actually commercially viable. But, a couple of years in, then what seems feasible and possible, that milestone actually changes. And so then being able to kind of plug in the framework that just makes it easy, because everybody working in a brand and even within the value chain, everybody's busy, right? And so how do we make it as easy as possible to do the right thing?
Yeah, it's very effective. Great, thank you. I'm going to turn over to you, Sophie, now, actually. If you could tell us a little bit about what the current status is with microfiber shedding and synthetic fibers and other fibers, that would be great.
Great. Where are we at the moment? Well, we know it's a problem. We've got facts, we've got data, there's research that backs up that it is a problem. And there's still people that we're trying to bring on board and identify that. We know that it's all fibres, so it's interesting that you talk about synthetics there, because that's one of the big misconceptions at the moment, that this is only associated to synthetics. But there's a lot of research that's coming through, and a lot of our own primary research that is very much demonstrating that every single fibre has a ability to shed to one extent or another. And our work is really about how we identify what those triggers are and how we support the industry in making those changes. So all fibre types. And also we know it's all pathways. So this problem was first associated with washing machines, with water pathways. But again, we know that different fibres travel in different ways through different pathways. At the moment, the focus is very much on water, oceans, fresh water, etc. But we know through emerging research as well, and understanding the patterns of how things are happening, that we're also seeing air as a pathway, land as well. So it adds new dimensions to the topic. It is a complex topic, so more to come on that. Also, it has very much at the moment the attention of the policymakers, and we've heard in these last couple of days quite a lot of conversation about policy taking a very prominent position in the agenda now, and it was really nice to see it ahead of the conference this year. But we are working together with policymakers to provide very science-driven data to support policy. And I think from the Microfibre Consortium perspective, it's always been my vision that if we can actually align from policy down through supply chain, brands and retailers, we've got an aligned solution that very much supports everybody in that supply chain. So that's really good news for us, and we'll continue to try and make sure that we bring the policymakers into the same conversation with that same science-driven data.
And what are you hoping the policymakers will put in the new regulations?
Well, no knee-jerk reactions. I think if we start with what we don't want them to do, we don't want them to make assumptions on bad information. I think we have seen some legislative action that is based off assumptions from very early assumptions. And that's why we are really trying hard to scale our data, scale our knowledge, so we can provide that in and make really solid framework for what that policy direction needs to be. Yeah, more to come on that.
Okay, good, good,
Yes,
good.
yes.
And Namante, at Mass Holdings, what are the fibers that you're focusing on, and how do you structure sort of your preferred fiber matrix?
Okay, so to disappoint everyone, there's no one fiber that we come across that is good, but we do focus on the user case. We are a manufacturer who has, we do underwear, intimate apparel. We also do active and sportswear. So, you need things that are comfortable and fitting well, also things that perform well. So each fiber has a place, we believe, and interestingly, my team has got drowned in LCAs. People who are familiar with LCAs, you will know there is no one fiber that scores well on everything. If something scores great on carbon footprint, they won't score high on water. So, interestingly, even if there is a LCA, there's a great man-made cellulosic, which I think things are coming up. That is great. We still have to address what we've done for the past so many years. There is polyester around, there is nylon around, and we can't stray away from doing something and making it reusable. So I think it's really important not to get hung up on a LCA or a point of view, but take a holistic approach on all the harm we've done and all the good we can do. So that's kind of the approach we are taking. Our focus really is cotton, polyester, and nylon, trying to figure out how we move from making less harm to make it more regenerative. That is the area that we are collaborating, investing, and working with brands on, how we can make fiber-to-fiber recycled polyester, how can we make our cotton more regenerative, how can we get more regen cotton in. But something that I think is really important is while all this are there, we need to go ahead and do things. Go ahead and use these yarns. I know it's not perfect, and sometimes we might do more harm, but if we don't use and scale and use it in a meaningful program than a capsule, we will not learn to check and adjust and improve. So I think that's the area that's really important.
So action over perfection.
Very much.
And then learning.
At the
so,
start,
yeah.
at the start at
At the
least.
start, at the start, great. But then tracking the impact, of course, along the way and iterating and improving. So that's this design thinking approach. Let me turn to you now, Edwin, to talk a little bit.
I was just enjoying the conversation. Sorry. Go ahead. Yes.
Okay, to talk a little bit about the performance side too, and how you've been working at HK Rita to incorporate new fibers, recycled fibers, and get them to reach the level of performance technically and be incorporated into the supply chain the way they should, so that they can be adopted and scale.
Right. So the challenge and an opportunity for us as a technology provider is that we understand what the brands want. It has to be greener, it has to be cheaper, it has to perform better, right?
Seems like a higher bar than everything else, right? It's
well, at
like
least 2 out of 3.
better. Yeah.
And so the challenge is that there are some physical laws that would preclude us from doing that. So the challenge is, first of all, how do we talk about these things that we want to reuse, and then we can get on to new fibers, because whatever we do, and even though we talk about circularity, there is still leakage, and it still costs. And so it is. I think, as is said on the stage yesterday, it's a less bad solution, and not the. And then so there's a more good than, and this is sort of the stopgap for us to get there. The challenge is multifaceted. I think for our part, we work on the technology part, which is what are the chemical solutions, what are the biological solutions that you can break down, especially blended materials, and you can separate them. You remove the dyestuffs, the treatment on the materials, and then you can go so that we can go from fiber to fiber or garment to garment. On top of that, we have to do that in a way that we don't create new problems in the process of solving old problems. So we want to make sure we don't create a new waste stream that is going to be problematic in somewhere else. that's, believe it or not, that's the easy part. The challenge comes into the business case for this, and I think this has been alluded to, which is how do you get toothpaste back into the tube, right? What's the reverse logistics of that? How do you actually how do you solve a problem that somebody created 10 months ago when they designed this, and then when they blended this, and they made those types of decisions that created this problem in the first place? And how do we stop doing that so that we don't, we're not perpetually have our fingers at the dike, if you will? And then how do we create more and more success stories with these types of materials?
Right.
So it's the technical, it's the science problem, but the business case, the reverse logistics involved, and then creating the marketplace solution.
Many things.
Yeah.
But yeah, they say that 80% of the impact of a product comes at the design phase, which is why so many people are going back from the materials that are chosen. So you're saying we need to get back to make sure we're not just treating the symptoms, but the root cause of the problem with that piece, how things are conceived at the beginning, and then...
Well, first we should stop creating the problem in the first place, right? When we can talk about overproduction and another, that's somebody else's topic. But we are producing a lot of things that don't go anywhere, that are not useful. So how do we stop doing that? But then also, how do we create intentionality so that we understand the materials that we use for our clothes are quite robust, and they have multiple uses. And so how do we think about that at the design phase? How do we design that into our materials, into our products?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I'm going to go to you, Anna, and then we're going to ask a couple questions to the audience. So from the innovator side, you're doing mechanical recycling of cotton. What do you think is needed in terms of collaborations? I mean, you have done a great job in scaling, where you are today is really quite impressive. But what do you see as some of the lessons you've learned, and what are the elements that we need, and the ingredients to this recipe to get to scale?
The point here is that the textile recycling supply chain cannot function at a small scale. So scaling is the basic. And of course, we need to partner with sorters and collectors that can provide the textile waste at the scale or the volume that we need, but also with brands. And I saw that there are several brands today at this room, and that's important because brands are the ones creating the demand. And the demand is not enough to do it through capsule collections, but making recycling materials a core fiber in their portfolio. So I think that here we are speaking a lot about innovation and collaboration during those 2 days. But I think that solutions are already there. So what we need is to start the implementation.
Similar to what Namante was saying too. We have to act. We have to get started and not wait till some magic certainty comes that will never come, really. Yeah. Okay. No, it's a very good point. So I'm going to open it up now. I think we have a microphone, right? Okay. Are there any questions from the audience? Now everyone's being up. There's one over here. Great.
Thanks. Since we're talking about next gen and microfiber and, of course, recycled cotton, things like that, so can you address the fact about propensity to shedding when you're talking about recycling, especially cellulosics or natural fibers especially? What are we doing about, reducing the propensity to shed when you go into next life?
Yeah, Sophie, go for it. Yep.
We've actually got a positioning paper on that. We've done quite a lot. Sorry, commercial plug. No, we've done a lot of research on the recycling of polyester, actually. We've got a database, which is the world's largest data set of testing results from all sorts of fabrics. We test them for how much fibre is coming out. And from that data set, we actually pulled all the recycled materials. So we looked at both. Mechanically recycled is very comparable to virgin, so we're not really seeing any detrimental effect. There's a lot of other papers, some of them are slightly conflicting with that, but this is the largest data set that we've taken the information from.
We have put a call out to the industry to test more chemically recycled materials. And if anybody wants more information about that, I can share it. But once we get the scale of the chemical recycled testing to the same level as the mechanical recycling, we'll be able to do a deep dive data analysis and really understand, how chemical sits against the mechanical. So yeah, we have done quite a lot of research in that area because we know that the industry's scaling the use of recycled and we need to understand it better. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Yes,
very
thank
important
you.
question. Thank you. Another question from the audience. Who we have? Don't be shy. Okay, good.
Good on you, Robert. Way to break the ice.
Thanks. Thank you very much, by the way, very interesting topics. I've been pretty much on the fiber side, and I also know, for instance, from a cellulosic world that, we do talk about our fibers are fully bio-based, biodegradable, but it's specifically then becoming an issue when we're talking about the dyeing and the finishing. So even if I have a cellulosic fiber, the way how it's dyed, it might no longer be biodegradable. But also, and I think, Edwin, you're also very familiar there, would be if I have a certain color, and we all like to have our clothes nicely colored, then that becomes a huge issue on the circularity. So just want to get a feel. We have fiber producers in the room, we have brands in the phone. What I find missing a lot in these forums are the people on the dyeing and the finishing side. So just want to get a feel a little bit of how you see it, and also how we maybe can engage them a little bit more if we need to, and how we can engage them more in our discussions.
Nice. Where are you from, Robert?
Well, I'm now on my own, but I was 10 years on the board of Lenzing.
Oh, great.
And now I'm an independent advisor to Fibre, a startup.
Oh, yes, nice.
And I'm the chairman of HiQ, which is...
Oh, perfect.
so,
Thank you.
yeah.
Great. Yes, Anna.
I would like to mention here, and I completely agree with your point, that for example, we have a family product called our color blend, where we directly select the textile waste. I mean, we sort it by color, and then we blend it with recycled polyester already dyed. So therefore, we have a fiber with the color that the customer wants, and the idea is to avoid this extra dyeing that happens through the process, and therefore we have great environmental impact savings above all focus on water savings and also the chemicals.
Nice. Great.
We do that too. You don't get a perfect, there is a color shade challenge, but best not to get it wet again, right, when you're recycling.
Cool.
But I agree with Robert. I think that is an area that does not have a lot of focus. You can come up with the best fibers. Even cotton, if you put certain finishers and chemicals and dyes, it becomes non-biodegradable. So, so I think it is very right. It's something that we should start focusing on.
For sure. And I think in general, this question of how do you get suppliers involved earlier in this whole process is incredibly important. And I'm just going to talk for a minute because one thing that I've been working on for the last 6 months is this study on next-gen materials, so next-gen to this-gen and scaling these material innovations in the fashion sector that was sponsored by the Caring Group and by Loudest Foundation. It'll be out in a few weeks. But for this report, I surveyed over 150 people, and about 50 of them were startups, and these are startups doing bio-based materials, doing dyes and finishes, and also recycling technologies. Also interviewed almost 60 people in addition to the survey. And so it was innovators, investors, brands, suppliers, and supporting organizations. I'm working with with Fashion for Good on it. Canopy, you've been quite helpful. Biofabricate's really been involved. So what do we do, and where are these levers and this next level of unlocking? And so I'm really excited to get this out in a few weeks, and there were some great findings. And I think overall, there's this will and there's this this interest and this drive, but it's almost like we're between paralysis and progress in a way. And I think, if you look at the market conditions, we have the enabling market conditions to make this work. We have the regulation. We know that our traditional supply chains are going to see increasing costs because of climate change and sourcing your cotton or whatever in your manufacturing. We know we have impact objectives that all the brands have set, and we need these materials in order to get there. And we know the consumers are asking for it. So we're ready, we're primed, we're ready. But there are things that the industry needs to do to get over this paralysis. And some of these things are the frameworks and the clarity, which is why I wanted to press on that. Like, we need more alignment and standardization on what are the specifications we need to reach, what are the LCA boundaries we need to look at by the different types of innovations. But we also need, and one of the biggest things, we need to get the suppliers involved earlier and have these triangulated relationships where you have the brand, the innovation and technology, and the supplier, and how key that is. And it hasn't been done enough, really. And then the final thing in terms of, there's this alignment, there's the optimization of R&D, and the third thing is really about the policy and how we can come together and use our voices better to be able to get more of the right funding, more carrots instead of sticks. And I know we're going to try to touch on this too, because you're doing a lot of work here. But we need subsidies, we need favorable tariffs, we need more to really get to the next level. So maybe we can hit a little. And actually, I don't know what time it is. So how many? I have 20 minutes. Okay, great. So let's first talk a little bit about getting the suppliers involved earlier, and I'll go to you, Namante, to give your insights on this, and maybe Edwin, and then we can talk a little bit about the funding side too, Nicole, and some of the work you guys are trying to do there. Yeah.
Sure. So when I say supplier, I think there are a lot of us. There's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5.
Yeah.
So I come from tier 1, which is a vendor. And I'm actually talking about the vendor here. I think the ones that work with the brands one-on-one. At least that's the relationship we have. I feel we are in a really good place to influence the value chain both up and down. And I do feel the vendor is a missing link in all these conversations because you understand the complex network. You know how to navigate difficult or big organizations. And also, when you listen through today and yesterday, there is a sense that vendors and suppliers are helpless. I don't think so. I think not majority of them are. But it's about what has a demand, right? If there is a demand, it's simple economics. If there's a demand, if there's a recognition of cost and effort, I think it'll happen. And it's that. That's what's important. So I'll share an example. 5 years ago, I said we put a stake in the ground in terms of working on circularity. And none of the startups want to talk to us.
Really?
They wanted to talk, I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but they want to talk to brands because they thought it's going to be faster, they can get there faster. But today things have changed. We work with a lot of startups. We are able to validate, give feedback, improve, and then take it to the brands. And for the brands also, so this work is happening way down, like a chip, like one of you said, it's a chip supply, it's a fiber supply, it's a farm. And for a brand to see how it would look in a fabric or a product is difficult, how do you validate, how do you create a garment? So I think that's where a vendor like us could come in. And there's a lot of us, not only MAS, to really convert it into a product a buyer can understand while ensuring that, you meet all the things you need in terms of the startup's requirement. So yeah, I do.
How are you guys choosing which innovations to work with? That's based off what the brands are asking you, or what's your methodology? Because one of the things we see is there's so much more pipeline now of innovations, and that's part of the analysis paralysis. It's like, who do we bet on? I don't know. There are too many. So what process do you go through?
So I think I touched on it earlier. We figured out the three big ones we want to address. So we try to stay in that path, not that we ignore something else that comes along.
Yeah, but those three, how do you get to those three?
So my team can say this. Anyone who comes our way, we'll speak to them.
Yeah.
Then we'll also stay connected to a lot of startups. I mean, not that a lot, but at least 20, 30 startups are live in our pipeline. And we'll keep talking to them. If we think they need more time, we will connect with them every 3 months, every 6 months. But it's also, to be fair, we will engage with people who are a bit higher in the TRL level, because we need to get a yarn and make it into fabric. So we do not go after seed funding and things like that. One other thing that we kind of want to make sure is when we invest, it is to convert core. It is not to go and, have press and have capsule.
Yeah.
It is to convert core. So
Yeah.
that's the path we
That's
take.
the outlook you have.
Yeah, but I must say, like, maybe we are in a unique position as well. We work with a lot of brands, and we know what they're asking for. So our knowledge is much better for that collective knowledge.
Yes.
And we go to the startups with that collective knowledge. So
Yes.
we are able
And
to
that's
kind of
key.
guide and
Yeah,
understand.
for sure. No,
Yep.
that's great. Edwin, you want to chime in maybe for
Yeah. I feel like this conversation is like we're a group of mice who agree that it's a great idea to put a bell on the cat. The question is how do you execute,
Yeah.
right? And I think also to your earlier point, Amantha, is I think, a 70% solution is better than a 0% solution. And for us, we don't have another 15 more years to talk about this, right? We just really need to get going. So it's a little bit messy and it's not perfect, but version 1.0 is always going to be like that. So I think that's the lens, and that we should be looking at this, is that how do we push something out quickly, and that we can begin to engage and deal with this, and acknowledge that there are going to be failures along the way. It's going to be a little bit messy, but we'll get smarter, we'll get better. But this sense of optimism and this sense of impatience, I think, is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like impatience.
Yeah.
And maybe you've got a cat. I've got a teenage dance party in my mind, where everybody's kind of standing around the edge, kind of nervously waiting for someone else to start dancing in the middle of the floor, and like we're at a point in history and the trajectory of the fashion industry where we need to just channel our most outrageous extroverted friend who is going to get out there and bust their craziest dance moves, and we all need to be doing that.
Yeah. Right.
But I think we still lack a sense of passion and urgency. This is not let's have a nice, polite conversation about this.
No.
This is a existential crisis, and if we don't do this, the longer we talk about this, the more it's going to cost, and the more damage is going to be done.
And I think that's really key, because there's been a lot of talk about this, like it's morally important to do, it's environmentally important to do. I'm a professional tree hugger, of course. I kind of argue for that, but it's a business imperative,
exactly.
right? The supply chains are already being disrupted by the climate crisis. There are floods, 15 million hectares of forest burnt in Canada alone just this last summer. Like, this is a supply chain whose fiber basket is literally going up in smoke.
You're still working out of the goodness of your heart. The way I would see it is forget about collaboration and partnership. It is life and death, and it is a win or lose situation. So, and what is the battleground is everybody in this room versus all the brands that are not in this room, because the market isn't growing, right? We have more and more distortions and lots of issues that are developing even as we speak. So everything, we grow by taking business away from somebody else's business.
Yeah, it's
right?
definitely.
And so it's the more sustainable, the better brands that win. And that's why we're in this room.
Edwin, you've really taken on the face-off part of the.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's good.
I
like it.
I think they win because, of course, that's the future of the business. But it's also brands that don't transition, suppliers that don't transition will lose because they just won't be able to.
Right.
There has to be a decoupling from raw material reliance. Like, it is just.
But we've been
not
terrible at communicating the business case. I mean, for the last 15 years, we've been talking about the business case. I've never seen a good business case. And it exists, why is that? And what I always talk about is decoupling the premium from the procurement cost, because this is a life cycle cost that we're talking about of this product. And there are going to be places with circularity where you're going to make money, and there are going to be places with EPR and legislation or disposal or inventory costs where you're going to lose money at the end. So it's or you're going to make money because you're changing the way you're processing, or you don't need the same inputs because you're using a next-gen solution that's cleaner. And we don't think of it that way, and it's almost a false sense of security for the brands to be like, I paid price parity at procurement, because that's not what counts anymore.
But there's enough opportunities to go around. Like innovators and startups do better. And for brands, you have to think more about, there's got to be different metrics to think about
Exactly.
success.
Yeah.
And there's got to be different financial models
Right.
Yeah.
that you
Totally.
measure yourself against. And then you have to, sustainability is about long-term
Yeah.
growth, right?
Yeah.
And how do we stay in the game long enough?
For sure.
And how budgets are actually developed and thought of and what they're actually tied to.
Yeah.
Change
let's
KPIs of buyers.
change
Yes,
KPIs of buyers.
exactly.
Yes, yes,
Sorry.
completely. Who agrees with that? Change
Yeah.
KPIs of buyers. Change KPIs of merchandisers. Yes. Okay, good. Well, let's do it. 10 minutes? Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit about funding and what's needed to make the transformation that we're talking about here, which is like a lot of money, and we're not quite seeing that yet. And I'm just going to throw this out to any of you, but who needs to be contributing more in the R&D? Like, how do we get the governments involved? How do we get investors who may be a little shaky now because they're not seeing enough success stories and they're seeing RenewCell and Milo, which were referred to this morning. So let's turn to that for a second. So who would you like to jump in on this,
I'll
Nicole?
kick
Because I
us
know you're
off.
doing work in this space.
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely government, the regulations that are coming in the EU, very welcome, right,
Yeah.
on a number of
Yeah.
areas. And it needs to be coupled with kind of actually helping kind of the commercialization. Incentives, grants, feed-in tariffs, tax incentives, both kind of credits as well as deductions, whatever that looks like we can look at renewables, we can look at EVs.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of mechanisms that have already been designed that can just be adjusted
Yeah.
and moved across. And so even in the EU, there's the New Horizon Fund, great, all focused pre-commercialization. And then when a venture is at its most vulnerable with largest amount of debt and doing a 10x, 15x scale up, there's no safety net. And so that needs to be prioritized and put in place. So that's one piece. There's definitely a role for government. There's a role for brands. Most brands don't have active investment strategies. They need to. And it needs to move from just being, I'm going to place my bet on this kind of early stage venture and get a little bit of an equity stake from a competitive perspective. And it needs to move to brands looking at different models. Because even just in the man-made cellulosic and the paper packaging space, we need to move $78 billion, that's billion with a B, over the next decade to actually transform and build the new kind of infrastructure that's needed. And so no brand can do that by themselves. We need mobilizing institutional capital, sovereign wealth funds, DFIs, but brands have an important role to play in not only de-risking it with establishing offtake agreements and purchasing, but also actually putting money in. And so Canopy is working on a fund, a private equity fund, a $300 to $500 million private equity fund, just focused on helping catalyze commercial scale production in those two commodities. But that needs to happen across the board. And I think the work that Bestseller and H&M did with the Bangladesh energy system, that's an interesting sort of iteration. And we need to see more of those.
Do you want to say a
kinds
couple
of
words about it for people who aren't familiar with it?
Oh, so there was a $100 million kind of agreement really focused on helping establish at scale renewable energy in really important production center. And it was developed in conjunction with government funding agencies where the investment on the part of the brands and the engagement of the value chain, along with other international players and the Bangladeshi government, led to this major infrastructure project being able to proceed. And that's the kind of, we need to be quantum leaping in terms of ambition.
100%. Yeah.
I actually have a different point of view. We're talking about brands having to invest and scale. What's also interesting is think of taking that investment and investing on the product to pay 5 cents more, 2 cents
Nice.
more. That will move the needle faster.
Yes.
That will get suppliers to do the investment because there are suppliers who can invest. The chip manufacturers, the big mills are not unable to invest. But it's the recognition of the costs. So I think as much as it's great to invest on startups to scale, also focus on recognition of real cost. And that 2-3 cents that might really drive other people who know that part of the value chain to drive it.
Yes.
I think that's a really important.
It's a great point, Namante. We only have a few minutes, so Anna or Sophie, do either of you want to come in on this conversation?
Just very quickly, funding. There's a lot of funding that goes on for established projects, established topics. I think one of the things that we learned very quickly with the Microfibre Consortium was funding needs to be available ahead of the problem, because now the problem is mainstream, policymakers are after it, and you need years to build up that data, years to build up that research. So it's high risk, I know, and I know it's not a good bet for an investor, but there needs to be some infrastructure that people that are prepared to stick the neck out and look at those emerging topics can find a funding infrastructure. Because the work that we did was based off crowdfunding because there was no funding available.
Wow,
So,
incredible.
We are tier 4, so for us it's very difficult to move the needle by ourselves. So I think that here investments, collaboration is super needed. And yesterday somebody told in a panel that some companies are looking for solutions that are already, perfect, that in place to use right now. And however, there are some challenges that maybe together and through those investments and through collaborations we can overcome, but we need to start the implementation. I'm repeating the same point, but I think that's the main conclusion from those 2 days. We need, there are a lot of commitments, a lot of good intentions, but we need implementation, we need investments, and as soon as possible. We are already late.
Yeah, great. We have 5 minutes. Good. We have time for a couple questions from the audience. Great. Over here we have 2. So a big theme here is the action over perfection. I know in particular with recycled materials, you're like, if it's not 100% recycled or 50 or 60, and you're like,
and produced with renewable
and,
energy.
yeah, exactly. Okay.
Thank you. My question is predominantly for you, Edwin. In the debate this morning, Vanessa Friedman was talking about how we need to find new ways of engaging new business models, and it doesn't have to mean that revenue shrinks. And you're talking about comply or die, or evolve or die, and sustainability, circularity is the way forward. And I think probably everyone in this room really, really wants to see that happen. Right. But I come from a national business cluster that works with the lifestyle industry, and our very big problem is to find really compelling, scaled examples of it really working, of reselling being a really good business for the majority of brands, of using more responsible materials at the cost they carry currently. So could you give us some concrete scaled examples or a trajectory for what you see that will come in place to make this happen, that we all want to see happen but have a really hard time seeing?
Right. Yeah, I wish I can say, oh, here are 10 great success stories. I think there are lots in the pipeline right now. We see a lot of effort and a lot of excitement. And it was said from the stage yesterday morning too as well, business and purpose or profit and purpose have to align. Otherwise, you shouldn't be in the marketplace, or you will be replaced in the marketplace. And I think that's the attitude that we have to go into. I think that it is a opportunity for us to radically rethink our industry. We are so far still tinkering around the edges and trying to do incremental improvements because we're not brave enough or don't have the vision to really disrupt our industry.
But sorry to jump in, when you as a business, or not you, a business owner, sees like the very, very highly accelerating growing business models that really are succeeding right now from a monetary perspective. You look at Temu and you look at Shein, sorry. And I think like that adds to the complexity of wanting to do the right thing, but really not seeing it.
Absolutely.
Just 1 second.
Oh,
I sell socks, and we contributed in 7 years' time 1.8 million euro. Our socks are 25% more expensive, but our story, which really true, is 35% more value. So people are willing to pay the price if it's a true story, and we contribute funding to dive more, to clean more oceans. So
there's a success story right there.
Yes.
There. We'll use you as a success story.
By your own feeling and heart.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
easy, it is possible.
I think we do have to solve that problem for the consumer, because consumers want to feel good about what they purchase. They don't want to worry about what it's doing to the environment or to labor or to women or other unintended consequences. So by really giving a point of sale help to consumers, by really giving them peace of mind, that is a recipe for success. And probably our industry need to learn from other industries that are moving much farther along than we are. Rather than looking around at our peer group, we should be broadening
We can look
our
at
horizon.
renewables, we can look at, like, there are other sectors that have gone through quite drastic.
Aluminum recycling.
Absolutely,
right,
and
things-
within
right.
compressed periods of time, 5-10 years, there's
Yes,
been
yes.
catalytic change.
I used to bring the cans back to the supermarket because I get 5 cents a can, right? Let's give everybody some money to
Yeah.
bring their stuff back. Do we have any more time? We do have one more question. I think you had one, right? Did you have a question? Yeah.
You are brave.
We kind of just touched on it at the end there, which was about consumers, because the whole talk about this, no one mentioned consumers, and consumers are ultimately what drives business. So my question was, how do we bring consumers along with us on this journey for preferred fibres?
So let me give you my point of view.
And
I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
Nobody would buy a 10-year-old cell phone. Yet the T-shirt you buy tomorrow is the same T-shirt that was made 10 years ago. Same technology, same material, right? We, as an industry, have not caught up with the lifestyle of our consumers. We sell them the most expensive, the heaviest, dumb system that we carry around every day. Our clothes don't take care of us. We have to take care of them. Our phone keeps us connected, keeps us safe, do so many things for us. So what we need to do is to create products that will help customers live a healthier life, keep them healthy, protect them from dangers. And that's where the innovation, I think, opportunities come in. We just need to come up to.
Well, Namante's going. Thank you.
Sorry.
I want to make sure, Namante, what did you have?
No,
Was that?
Are you okay? Did you
Yeah,
have
I'm
something you
good.
wanted to
No,
comment?
I think it's a really important fact, but some of the brands we speak to, we talk about traceability and how important it is, but it is important. I think sometimes from all the brands we've spoken to, they feel the consumers want the brand to be responsible. They want to be able to trust the brand that they're doing the right thing.
Right.
I know there are consumers who are interested, but I'm a consumer, and when I wear something, I look at it whether I look good on it or not. I don't necessarily look at where it came from and was any harm caused. Right. But I try to buy from a brand that I know will ensure things are looked after. So I totally agree. At the moment, consumers are not talking with their dollars about how they feel. But I think it's up to the industry, and very much agree with what you're saying. Our industry is so stubborn in terms of changing, and I think it's back on us to figure it out, because I don't think the consumer can make it happen. Of course, educating them is really important, but I think a lot more onus is on us.
All right, I'm sorry, but we're out of time, and I know everybody wants to make a comment there, but we're out of time. So I just want to say thank you to the panelists. What was the main message? Action. Thank you. Action. Okay, thank you. Bye.